What's up guys, it's MTG Matt for you today with a little bit of a different video, and that is we are going to take a look at the early previews for Innistrad Midnight Hunt, which is scheduled to come out I think on September 8th for Magic Arena, so it's not even 1 month away. And last week there has already been some previews, some teasers, which I just want to quickly discuss here in a short video. I don't want to go too deep on the cards, but it's like 5, 6, 7 cards to talk about, but they look really cool, so I want to talk about them. And just by being here on mythicspoiler.com, which is my go-to site for looking at spoilers. I will start with, we're going to throw comment to Mythic, right, to keep things interesting throughout the video. And we're starting here with Consider. It's just a 1 mana blue instant. It says, look at the top card of your library, you may put that card into your graveyard, draw a card. So for those of you who have been around for the Ravnica sets, you know that this top part here, this top text is basically Survey 1, right? Look at the top card of your library, put it in your graveyard or not, and draw a card. This is, I think this is actually a better opt, right? Because it seems like with Innistrad we're going to get support for graveyard-centric decks, and the ability to put stuff in your graveyard is real nice, especially since if you think about it, if you have a deck that relies maybe on a certain number of cards in your graveyard, then Consider already for 1 mana puts 2 cards in your graveyard, right? Because you can put the top card of your library into your graveyard and Consider itself goes into your graveyard. So for that matter, I think Consider might be viable for those kinds of decks. It's also interesting maybe for ESET styles of decks. You know, there are decks who sometimes want to focus on having a number of instant or sorcery cards in your graveyard, but there isn't such a deck yet right now in Standard 2022. But if this kind of deck gets enough support with Innistrad, this might be interesting. Still, I don't think this is going to see a lot of play. We have stuff like Curate in Standard from Strixhaven for 2 mana, which I think, let's look at the top 2 cards of your library and put them into your graveyard or back in any order, which I think is just better for that, although it costs 1 more mana. It's not around here, so, but still Consider this might see some play, like Survey 1, draw a card, could see some play. Next we got something very exciting here. It's Join the Dance, and it is exciting because, as you can see, Flashback is going to be back in Standard with Innistrad, which I think is super nice. It's such a great mechanic, and I think it's especially nice because we don't know yet how, like, to what degree Innistrad Midnight Hunt and Innistrad Crimson Vow, which comes out later in November, to what degree the mechanics are going to be the same in those 2 sets. And it might be the case that by seeing Flashback on Join the Dance here for Innistrad Midnight Hunt, we'll also see Flashback for Innistrad Crimson Vow. Might be the case, right? Which is super cool because Flashback is just a great, powerful mechanic. What does Flashback do? It says you may cast this card from your graveyard for its Flashback cost, then exile it. The reason this mechanic is so powerful is because it means that every card that has Flashback is basically 2 cards in 1, right? Because you can always cast it twice. Or if you put it in your graveyard before casting it through whatever effect, then you can also cast it from your graveyard. So Flashback also supports graveyard-centric deck types. And here Join the Dance is just a 2 mana sorcery in Selesnya colors. Create 2 1/1 white human creature tokens, Flashback for 5 mana. And I think this card is very cool. You know, Flashback is always great. And especially since, in general, I am a big fan of the Selesnya archetype, you know, of being like, having like a swarmy deck that just goes really wide and, you know, overwhelms your opponent with tokens. And I think this archetype hasn't been around in a really long time for a Selesnya, which I think is a shame, and Join the Dance fits really well into this. Getting 2 bodies for 2 mana is a great deal, and with flashback on top of it, this looks really, really cool. That being said, from what we've seen from Standard 2022 right now, such a deck has not really a lot of support right now. However, we do have landfall support from Zendikar Rising in the form of Felidar Retreat and Scoot Swarm, which is a go white deck, and maybe Join the Dance could, you know, play into that. So I really like this card, and I would love to see a comeback of some, you know, Smarmy, Selesnya token deck. I think that would be really, really cool. And Join Dance, real nice. 2 cards in 1 for 2 mana, get 2 tokens, and then later from your graveyard, make 2 more tokens, right? Well, for a high cost, but it's for free, basically. Like, the extra card is for free, and that's what makes it so powerful. Let's go. We got Play with Fire, a instant for 1 red. Great art. Play with Fire deals 2 damage to any target. If a player is still damaged this way, scry 1. So this is a better shock, strictly better shock. And because of that, I don't think this is going to see any play. Shock is not seeing any play in Standard right now, because we have Frostbite to deal with creatures, and the, you know, the upside of also being able to hit players is not that relevant, not even with the Scry one on top. So I think Play with Fire will see no play, even without having seen the rest of Innistrad, and yeah. If at any point in time Shock would be viable, then Play with Fire is just strictly better. So in that case, you know, Play with Fire can become interesting, but I expect this card to have no impact on Standard when Innistrad comes out. Next we have an uncommon that is definitely going to make an impact on Standard, which is Infernal Grasp. 2-mana instant in black. Destroy target creature, you lose 2 life. So this is an unconditional removal for creatures on 2 mana. The only downside being you lose 2 life. Very powerful card. Very, very, very powerful card. And I have to say, I'm kind of disappointed to see such a card being printed for a Standard, because I've been playing a lot of Standard 2022 right now, and what I've been enjoying a lot about Standard 2022 is that while control decks are around, like Dimir control seems very strong in that format, I feel like control decks are in check because the format seems to be very board-centric because of all the man lands and the efficient creatures that are around, for example, for mono green, but especially because all the very efficient removal that we have in the current Standard rotates out, right? We won't have an eliminate anymore. We won't have is it called Merciless Execution? I could never remember like the 2-mana removal spell from Ikoria. That one rotates out, right? All those powerful removal spells are rotating out, and the new Standard format is not left with a lot of good removal spells. Infernal Grasp is an amazing removal spell. Like, losing 2 life is no joke if you're against an aggressive deck, but it's still unconditional removal. Destroy any creature, right? It doesn't matter what mana value, if it has counters on it, and so forth. So I expect Infernal Grasp to be very powerful, to be a push for control decks. Still, with all the manlands, I still think that luckily I expect the new Standard to still be board-centric, which I think is healthy and really nice for Magic in general. But still, in my opinion, I'm a bit disappointed that right after rotation, Wizard decides to just introduce another powerful 2-mana removal spell, instant speed in black again. So there you have it, Infernal Grasp. It's gonna see a lot of play. Next up, we got Champion of the Perished. 1 mana, 1/1 zombie. Whenever another zombie enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on Champion of the Perished. Really cool card, really like it. I'd love to have a viable zombie deck again in Standard. I think that would be super cool. And it needs a lot of support though from Innistrad to be viable. I I don't see enough viable zombies right now for standard to make this playable, so I expect a lot of zombie support from Innistrad, which is very exciting. I love the flavor of Innistrad. It's very dark, very Halloween-y. I think that's great. So without seeing the rest of the set, you can't really judge whether this is going to be a thing. But if there is enough zombie support, this should be great, should be powerful. So Jeff the Bearish, really cool card. Next up is also a really cool card. It's Triskai Demi, which is a person obsessed with the number 13, and the card reflects it really, really well. It's a 2-mana 1/3 human wizard. Let me actually quickly check the time here. Okay, just over 10 minutes. 2-mana 1/3 human wizard. You have no maximum hand size. Not a really relevant effect to have, but it's nice to have. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have exactly 13 cards in your hand, you win the game. It's 1/3 and you can pay 4 mana to draw a card. This card is very interesting because the way I think about this card is that the win condition is not necessarily that hard to get. If you think about, if you run stuff like a Dimir control deck, you can put stuff in like Seagate Restoration, which can draw you a bunch of cards. And of course, you always have other ways of drawing cards, like with what's it called? This Behold card from Kaldheim. The 4-mana card is this Scry to draw 2 cards, you can foretell and so forth. You have enough ways of drawing cards, and if you take Dimir Control, for example, standard 2022, they run Mordenkainen and they run Liliana, which both draw you a lot of cards. So those decks can have a lot of cards in their hand. Also, on your upkeep trigger, your lands are untapped, and with this on the stack, you can still draw more cards to get to those 13 cards. And of course, the card itself helps you by having a mana sink. So, I'm not totally convinced that this is just a meme card. I feel like this could be like an alternative win condition card in decks, where you put like 2 of these in your deck, and having a 2-mana 1/3 where you can dump mana into for drawing cards, it's not the worst. I could also see this being played in Simic decks, which have a bunch of mana, and where you can just dump the mana into draw cards. That being said, we have Gretchen, right? This 2-mana Simic Legendary that basically does the same thing, but it's better for that kind of deck. So this is probably, I think this is not going to see a lot of play, but this is one of those types of cards I wouldn't say this is unplayable or you will never see somebody win with this. I do think that people will attempt to win with this because the win condition is not totally unrealistic. And the last preview card, we actually have a new Planeswalker here in Mythic, right? Let me actually zoom in. It's Renin 7, which I'm gonna focus the most time on, and I've made a few notes for myself. So Renin 7, let's just read through this once. 5 mana, 5 loyalty, green Planeswalker. Has 4 loyalty abilities, so very unique in that regard. +1, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. Put all land cards revealed this way into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. 0, put any number of land cards from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. -3. Create a green tree for a creature token with reach, and this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. And -8, return all permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. You get an emblem with you have no maximum hand size. Okay, so there's a lot of to digest here, and what do we want to start is, first off, this has 4 loyalty abilities, which is pretty unique for Planeswalkers, gives it a lot of flexibility. That being said, I do want to note that modern Planeswalkers usually have 3 loyalty abilities and a static ability. So basically, a Planeswalker having 4 abilities is not that uncommon anymore, right? I mean, there's a difference between a loyalty ability and a static ability, but still, having 4 abilities on Planeswalker is not that big of a deal anymore. Okay, so what is to be noted about this Planeswalker? First off, I want to focus on the -3 because this 3/4 creature, very importantly, it has reach, which is very important against dragons, especially against Goldspan Dragon. And it's gonna be big enough to kill a Goldspan Dragon, right? If you play this on turn 5, it's gonna be a 5/5 reacher, so you can block a Goldspan Dragon and it still survives. And it's also important that this guy makes tokens because, as I said, Standard 2022 is very board-centric, so always putting creatures on the board is very important. So that's already the plus for this Planeswalker. You can play this and put stuff on the board. So the -3 is already great, and obviously this might find a home in Simic ramp decks, where you have a lot of lands, and then this can pump out like 8/8s, 10/10s, and so forth. What else there's to say? Let's focus on the +1. The +1 puts lands in your hand, which is nice with the 0 ability, right? There's a synergy, you +1 on one turn, get like 2 or more lands into your hand, and the next turn you can activate the 0 and put all those lands onto the battlefield, which is cool. But what's nice about the +1, we've already seen flashback being a thing in Innistrad. So if there is enough graveyard support, this could be great for a graveyard-centric deck because it puts, with the +1, puts lands into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. And if you can use the stuff from your graveyard, this can effectively, in the best of scenarios, draw you 4 cards in a way, right? Which is really powerful, obviously. So the +1 filling up your graveyard and always putting lands into your hand is really nice. The 0 ability, I think, is just like a, how would I say, it's like a plus, like a bonus, but it's not really relevant because if you think about it, if you play this on turn 5, you won't have a lot of lands left in your hand to make this worthwhile. So you would need to find ways to get a lot of lands into your hand, which the +1 does. But if you think about it, if you +1, get 2 lands into your hand, given that you already played a land that turn, you will only have 2 extra lands the turn after, given that you don't draw an extra land. And then if you activate the 0, it basically puts an additional land on your battlefield that turn. It's not that exciting. So the 0 loyalty ability seems very underwhelming, very whatever, right? It's not powerful. And then the -8, return all permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. It's a very big value play. It's comparable with Harness Infinity, which is pretty powerful. Although it only returns permanent cards, but it's still a lot of value. And the emblem, if you have no maximum hand size, it's nice to actually keep that value in your hand, but that's just a bonus. So what do I think about this Planeswalker? I think all in all, it doesn't seem that powerful. I mean, I always love new Planeswalkers. I'm a big fan of Planeswalkers. I don't think this fits in a black-green deck because their Lolth is occupying the 5 mana slot. And although it puts a token on the board, black-green decks want to be swarmy. So I think this could find some play in Simic decks where you want to have a lot of lands on the board, you want to ramp, and so you always want to find more lands to play. And Red Seldom helps you find more lands, gives you a payoff in the form of that token, and can also get you permanent cards back from your graveyard. So this could see play in Simic ramp decks. Apart from that, if Innistrad is giving enough support for graveyard-heavy decks with flashback, this could be nice to fill up your graveyard and this way draw a bunch of cards with the +1. And those are basically my thoughts on this card. Maybe my dream comes true and there's support for like a Naya control deck where you put this guy in, he draws you lands, you use your graveyard somehow with flashback to get more value, and this guy gives you tokens. But I don't really see this happening. So Red and 7, of course I'm gonna try this, play this, but I don't think this is going to see a lot of play. And that wraps it up basically for all the previews from Innistrad. Already looks really cool what we've seen here. I love Flashback. The set seems to offer very cool flavor, very cool new cards, so I'm really excited. Looking forward to it. Hope you guys enjoyed my 2 cents on this, and I see you guys soon.